Thank you. This is a very important question, and I think in a sense it really gets to the bottom of the whole conversation. In 1948, the Nakba, Palestinians were intentionally, the Palestinian society was destroyed, was dismembered, intentionally dismembered and destroyed. There was a destruction of Palestinian society. Um, Numbers between 750,000 to 900 million Palestinians became refugees. Okay. And then not only in the surrounding Arab countries, but also globally. And in the sense, what happened is that Israel unintentionally created a community of Palestinians outside of Palestine. Then all of a sudden, those communities, um, out of the calamity, of Palestinians, emerged an opportunity for them to actually, all of a sudden, they started more or less speaking to one another. Not necessarily that it's organized per se, but the fact that Palestinians live in transnational spaces and feeling the need that they need to preserve their identity, I'm arguing that Palestinian identity is not only connected to the geography of Palestine. Palestinian identity, sure, it is connected to the geography, but now it exists in transnational spaces. And this is very powerful. If Israel is able to control Palestinians, say in the West Bank, in Gaza, and inside Israel, 1948 Palestine, if they're able to control them and anyone does anything, they can put them in jail, for example, and they can arrest them and they can put checkpoints and all that. What they cannot do is do that everywhere else where Palestinians exist. They can control the geography, maybe, but ultimately, there's also forces external to Palestine that are pushing against the practices of Israel. So similarly with Oslo, Oslo created divisions between Palestinians, unfortunately, and also the geography of Palestine, mostly, of course. To go from one place to another, from Ramallah to Nablus, there's a checkpoint. Between Ramallah and Bethlehem, there's a checkpoint. Between Bethlehem. So that created the complexity of life that we find today in the West Bank and Gaza, of course, obviously. Now, has that really created much of what's the impact of that on Palestinian society? The interesting thing about Palestinian society, resilience is at the center of identity. And the presence of Palestinians under any circumstance, no matter how harsh the conditions have become, Palestinians remain and they continue to speak about who they are and the significance of their identity, not only to them, but actually Palestinians become the symbol globally for people who have been wronged for a long time and have been racialized and demonized and dehumanized for a long time. But then at the end of the day, they prevail. Okay. Now, the genocide in Gaza, has that really changed the conversation? The answer is absolutely. And not only a conversation within the Palestinian society, say, in Palestine, Israel, Palestine 48, in West Bank and Gaza, or even the surrounding refugee camps in Arab countries, or the global Palestinian diaspora. Not only that it affected this particular Palestinian community that lives everywhere, but it also affected the very humanity of what humanity is all about, as far as I'm concerned. And also whether or not colonial practices of providing privilege for certain types of people, obviously white, Western European, all that, versus brown people. And in a sense, and it's not necessarily a matching situation, but the global North versus the global South. Are the lives of people from the global South equal to the people of the global North? And if anything, this has shown the kind of um, the double standard in the most harshest ways at this point. And I think it has affected how people think of humanity. And ultimately, there's a moment of reckoning that is going to happen at some point where everybody will be like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, that should have not happened. But from now until then, unfortunately, there will be a lot more deaths and a lot more destruction. So the genocide is very significant. And if anything, the genocide is, I mean, it has been dubbed and described as, the genocide that is most documented in history. You know, it is documented, it is live streamed, and it's everywhere, and it's immediate, right? People see it, yet they're not doing anything. Okay. And ultimately, that is going to become the very standard of where humanity, as international global community, and by global community, I don't mean the West only. I'm talking about the rest of the world, right? Um, the globe, the world, everywhere. People will have to start to say, yes, Palestine is where your humanity begins and ends. Okay. And these are difficult questions, and it's not going to happen. If it's not happening now, it might be happening now, and it is happening now, but ultimately, this will become the center piece of the conversation about equality and humanity.